Hello students, welcome to Biotech Easy, a platform where we discuss molecular techniques. And today we are going to discuss polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis part 1. And I know it's been a delay in uploading this video. I have recently joined as research assistant in MGM Medical College Indore, and so it was like 1 month getting acquainted with the lab things, in short adjusting. So let's start. In this video, I'm going to discuss about polyacrylamide gel, stacking and dissolving gel, protein run on SDS page, what are leading and trailing ions, role of SDS, mercaptoethanol, TEMET, APS, concentration of polyacrylamide, assembly unit, procedure, and lastly, I'm going to discuss some questions. Principle is the same, that under the applied electric field, the voltage that we are applying, the molecules, these biomolecules experiences of force which is equivalent to the product of the charge that they are carrying and the electric field that we are applying. So this force make the molecules to move out of the well and migrate with a certain velocity. This velocity, or we can say the speed with which the molecules migrate, it depends on the force, which in fact depends on the charge the molecule is carrying, the electric voltage that we had applied, and inversely proportional to the frictional coefficient. This frictional coefficient, it also plays a major role in determining the velocity, and it depends on the mass and shape of the molecule. What mass it is having, if a molecule is having more mass, then its velocity, then frictional coefficient will be more, and so the velocity will get decreased. If the molecule is then the shape of the molecules, or we can say the configuration of the molecule also determine its velocity, as it is directly linked with the frictional coefficient. So if the molecule is having a relaxed configuration, then it will take time to move through the gel pores, and if it is in the compact form or more condensed form, or we can say the globular form in case of proteins, then it will migrate faster through the gel. So all these things together determine the velocity, the charge, the electric voltage that we are applying, and the frictional coefficient. I'll discuss the basic structures that a protein can acquire. So protein basic structure is linear, which is open extended and unfolded polypeptide, where different amino acids are joined by peptide bonds. Here I have shown the peptide bonds with olive green color. So here R1, R2 and R3, these are the R groups attached to the amino acid, and these are, by the different R groups only we distinguish the amino acids, because the basic structure of each amino acid is the same. All amino acid contains the alpha carbon, then a C attached to it, then a amino N, the amino group attached to it, but on the amino acids only differs in the R group. So here the molecule which is having R1 denotes the amino acid 1, R2 where the molecule is having the R2, it denotes the amino acid 2. The molecule which is having R3 denotes the amino acid 3. So these three amino acids are joined by the peptide bond. So this linearly attached, open, unfolded polypeptide constitute the linear structure of protein. This linear structure can fold upon itself and can acquire the secondary structure, and there are two forms in secondary structure. One is the alpha chain, the helical structure, and the second is the beta sheet. The alpha chain, you can see the red dots there, they denote the intra-chain hydrogen bonds between the amino and the carboxyl terminal or carboxyl atoms. The in the beta sheet, one side have the free amino group, so we term it as N terminal, and the other side has carboxyl free end, so we denote it as C terminal. This is the basic secondary structure of protein. The third thing is that this polypeptide, or we can say the secondary structure, it folds back upon itself and can acquire the tertiary structures, And for the formation of tertiary structure, certain bonds are involved. These bonds can be hydrogen bonds, the salt bridges, disulfide bonds, hydrophobic interaction. Salt bridges are ionic interactions between the positively and negatively charged sites on amino acid side chains. Side chains are the R groups. So the R groups contain positively charged and negatively charged groups in it. So these groups interact with each other and form salt bridges. Disulfide bonds are covalent bonds. These are strong bonds. Then comes the hydrophobic interactions. Now, when two or more polypeptides interact with each other and come close and bind, they form tertiary structures. And in these tertiary structures, these polypeptides can be identical or they can be different. So basically two tertiary structures are there, fibrous and globular. Fibrous examples are collagen, elastin, keratin, and the very popular globular protein example is hemoglobin. So a protein can exist in all these four structures. Okay, primary structure, which is the linear. Secondary structure is alpha chain and beta sheet. Tertiary structure is where the peptide folds upon itself and certain bonds are involved. Then when two or more polypeptides join, they acquire a quaternary structure that can be globular or fibrous. In STS page, we make two types of gel. First one is the resolving gel, second one is the stacking gel. Here you can observe that there is a difference in pH. Stacking gel has pH of 6.8, whereas resolving gel has pH of 8.8. Since there is a difference in pH and concentration, I'll discuss about concentration later. Since there is a difference between concentration and pH, we call it a discontinuous gel electrophoresis. Yes, here you can see the cathode and the anode. Anode is the positive terminal, cathode is the negative terminal. We keep the wells at the negative terminal and dissolving gel end is connected to the positive terminal. Here you can see the mobility pattern. Fibrous protein migrates slower than globular proteins. Why? Because fibrous protein have fibers in it and these fibers face difficulty in moving through the gel pores, so they migrate slowly in comparison to the more compact globular proteins. Okay, here I have discussed about the R groups, that R groups, or we can say the side chains of amino acid, can contain some positively charged group and can contain some negatively charged group also. Here you can see it clearly. I have indicated the R groups or the side chains with maroon color. Arginine has amino uh, group in it which is positively charged, whereas glycine and alanine has hydrogen ions and methyl group respectively, which are uncharged. And if we discuss about glutamate and aspartate amino acids, then they contain COO negative, which is negatively charged in their side chains. So if a protein is having amino acids which are positively charged, if a protein contains acidic amino acids more in it, then the net charge on the protein will be positive. If it contains uncharged or non-polar amino acids, then the protein will have a net charge 0 or neutral. If it is having amino acids which have negatively charged groups in their side chains like glutamate and aspartate, then the protein will have a net charge of negative. So since a protein can have its own native charge and we have to run it through the gel between the electrodes, and we want to separate it according to its molecular weight, we have to uniformly charge the protein first, and we do this by using sodium dodecyl sulfate. Sodium dodecyl sulfate is an anionic detergent, means it contains a negative group. Here you can see the negatively charged oxygen group in the sulfate group. It has a hydrophobic chain which interacts with the protein and it gives a uniform negative charge to the proteins. How? I'll tell you. Second thing that this SDS does is it interrupts the non-covalent interactions and it denatures the protein secondary tertiary and quaternary structures. How it denatures it? By interrupting the non-covalent interactions which involve the hydrogen bonds, salt bridges, hydrophobic interaction, and van der Waals forces. Please note it down that SDS does not interrupt the covalent interaction, means SDS cannot break down the disulfide bonds. So how one SDS binds with up two amino acids, and the amount of SDS bound per gram of protein is constant, which is 1.4 gram of SDS per gram of protein. It means 1.4 gram of SDS binds with 1 gram of protein. Since per gram of protein binding of SDS is constant, which is 1.4, so it imparts a uniform negative charge to the protein, because binding of SDS per gram of protein is constant. So protein's negative native charge becomes negligible, and it acquires a uniform negative charge because of the bound SDS. Okay, let's see it. Here is the quaternary structure of a protein. SDS comes, it interrupts the non-covalent interactions. The polypeptides get separated. Again, SDS bind to it, linearizes it, and gives it a uniform negative charge. Now, what you can observe here, that one polypeptide is the smallest, other polypeptide is the largest, and there is another polypeptide which is intermediate in size. Okay, I have discussed in the principle that the velocity with which these bands will be moving is directly proportional to the charge it is carrying, the electric voltage we are applying. So here, which polypeptide is having the largest or we can say the greatest charge? Of course, the largest polypeptide, because more SDS is bind to it. As please recall, SDS binding to protein is constant, means to 1 gram of protein 1.4 gram of SDS will bind. So the largest polypeptide will be having more grams in of protein in it, okay, or its molecular weight will be more, so more SDS will bind to it, and it will have has more charge in it. So according to this equation, it should migrate the fastest in the gel towards the anode, or we can say the positive terminal. But it doesn't happen like that. Why? Because velocity also depends on frictional coefficient, and frictional coefficient is directly proportional to mass or size. So the increase in frictional coefficient is more when compared to the bound SDS. Therefore, the protein gets separated according to its molecular size. They move according to its molecular size. Smallest polypeptide will move the fastest, followed by intermediate, followed by the largest. So here the frictional coefficient plays a major role. And as I have told you that SDS does not cleave covalent bond like disulfide bonds. So if a polypeptide, if two polypeptides are joined by disulfide bonds, SDS is not going to separate it, and on the gel we will be getting only one band at some higher molecular weight or move towards the cathode. So in order to separate, or in order to get all the polypeptides which are there in our protein, we have to use beta mercaptoethanol, and beta mercaptoethanol is a reducing agent, and it reduces the disulfide bonds, it cleaves the disulfide bond, it separates the two polypeptides, and when we will run it on the gel, we are going to get two bands corresponding to these two polypeptides. So this is the difference. If you are using only SDS, and if some disulfide bonds are there in your protein, you will not be able to see all the polypeptides involved in it. So you have to use beta mercaptoethanol in order to see if there are any disulfide linkages are there. They will get broken down by this mercaptoethanol, and you will be getting two polypeptides or whatever polypeptides are there in your protein if some disulfide bonds are there. The reagents are sodium rhodecyl sulfate, polyacrylamide, bisacrylamide, which is light sensitive, glycine, tris HCl, tamide, which is also light sensitive, ammonium persulfate, beta mercaptoethanol, glycerol, and comacid blue stain. The things which I have colored in green, they are all constituent of the gel and the buffer system. The for buffers we make running buffer or tank buffer which has pH of 8.3, and sample loading buffer or the buffer we use for this making of the gel, the stacking gel. It has the pH of 6.8. Okay, so running or tank buffer constituents are tris HCl, glycine, and SDS. And for sample loading buffer, the constituents are tris HCl, glycerol, SDS, bromophenol blue. Glycerol gives density to the samples and it makes the samples to settle down in the well. So what it helps, whenever we are putting our samples into the well, it does not flow out of the well, it settle down into the well because of this glycerol. Then SDS role I have already discussed. It gives uniform negative charge to the proteins because binding of SDS to protein is constant, which is 1.4 gram. Second thing is it denatures proteins secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structure by interrupting the non-covalent interaction. Bromophenol blue is a dye which helps in visualization of the sample in the wells. It gives blue color and it acts as an electrophoretic front, seen as a blue line moving ahead of the samples. So these are the roles of different constituents that we are using in the buffer system. The components of gel, you can see it clearly in this table. The constituents are or the components are nearly the same except for the tris HCl. So for resolving gel, 1.5 molar tris HCl we use, pH 8.8. For stacking gel, the concentration of tris HCl is quite low, with it's 0 0.5 and its pH is 6.8. Then ammonium persulfate is there and tamide is there. Ammonium persulfate is the initiator and tamide is the catalyst. Therefore these two are to be added in the last because ammonium persulfate, it is a source of free radicals and it get readily oxidized. Tamide is a catalyst, so which catalyzes the reaction of formation of free radicals. Therefore these things should be added at last so that whenever the reaction starts we can directly pour in the gel solution into our gel plates. Components of gel. So by copolymerization of acrylamide and cross linker and dash methylene bisacrylamide by free radical mechanism. So the components, the monomers are acrylamide and bisacrylamide. These two interact with each other, copolymerize, and the mechanism behind this copolymerization is free radical mechanism. I'll discuss it. And the pore size is determined by the concentration of acrylamide as well as the ratio of acrylamide to bisacrylamide. So what ratio you are using and what concentration of acrylamide you are using, it will determine the pore size of your gel. Free radical mechanism of gel polymerization. So two things, the initiators are there. Initiators has two things, the free radical source and a catalyst. Free radical source generally it is ammonium persulfate and the catalyst is tetramethyl ethylene diamine tamide. Ammonium persulfate is a chemical initiator. It generates oxygen free radicals which are persulfate radicals. So this tetramethylene ethylene diamine it acts as a catalyst. It reduces the activation energy which is required for the formation of the for the formation of free radicals, and ammonium persulfate generates the persulfate free radicals. So these two things we generally use in SDS page. The alternative of ammonium persulfate is riboflavin or riboflavin phosphate. It is a photochemical polymerization because it requires light for the reaction to happen, and it has oxygen scavenging property also. Because of this oxygen scavenging property, the adverse effects of oxygen which has on the gel polymerization, it get reduced. Sometimes with this timid and ammonium persulfate, riboflavin is also used. So it what it does, since it is having oxygen scavenging property, so if there is any possibility of adverse effect of oxygen, it this riboflavin reduces it. And second thing is it mm, speed up the polymerization process also, because of its photochemical polymerization activity. So when only we are using timid and ammonium persulfate, the reaction is called chemical polymerization, and chemical polymerization takes 15 to 20 minutes for visible gelation to happen. Although after this 15 to 20 minutes also polymerization continues, and for chemical polymerization the approximate timing is 90 minutes for complete polymerization to happen. And if we are using riboflavin only, we call the process as photochemical polymerization, and for the visible gelation to happen it takes 30 to 60 minutes, which is more in comparison to chemical polymerization. And for complete polymerization it takes 8 hours, which is also more if you see the chemical polymerization, which is only 90 minutes. So photochemical polymerization are suited for lower buffer systems like electrofocusing, where the protein gets separated according to its isoelectric point. And the gel, it is having a pH gradient, means the pH changes at every point. So for that system, riboflavin or photochemical polymerization is much suited. Why tetramethylene? Why timid and APS are not suited? Because timid can interfere with the pH. That's why it's not suited for electrofocusing. Well, for both the systems, whether it is chemical polymerization or photochemical polymerization, the total polymerization should be greater than 95%, which means the conversion of monomer to polymer should be greater than 95%. And this reaction is exothermic reaction. Okay, here you can clearly see what are the components of stacking gel and resolving gel, as well as the mobility of ions. This is very important to keep in mind, that what is happening in the stacking gel and what is happening in the resolving gel, and it all depends on the mobility of ions. So in stacking gel, the glycinate ion moves the slowest, followed by the SDS bound protein, and fastest moving ions are the chloride ion. When I say fastest moving ions, then I'm talking about the ions which are moving much faster towards the anode, which is the positive terminal. In resolving gel, this mobility changes. Protein bound SDS moves the slowest, followed by the glycinate ion, followed by the chloride ion. And why this change is there, I'll tell you. Uh, this all this all is due to the change in pH and the configuration that that glycine is acquiring. Okay, that I'll tell you, but before that, you should observe that protein bound SDS is getting stacked between the glycine ions and the chloride ion in the SDS, in the stacking gel. And it is very important also, because we want our proteins which may have different molecular weight or different polypeptide size in it, we want it to enter the resolving gel at one time only, or at the same time only, so as to um, prevent the formation of smear. So that role is played by the stacking gel. I'll discuss in detail. Okay, what is happening to glycine, why its mobility is changing, it's all I'll discuss it here. So isoelectric point of glycine is 6.06. At low pH, it means when the conditions are acidic, all atoms are protonated. And all atoms are protonated because at acidic conditions there is more concentration of hydrogen ions. So all the atoms in the amino acid gets protonated, and in this way the glycine acquire a positive charge because the amino group it is protonated and it has positive charge. So at acidic pH, glycine has a positive charge. When we increase the pH and the pH reaches at about 7, deprotonation happen. Why deprotonation is happening? Because when we are increasing the pH, we are increasing the concentration of hydroxide ions, and due to increase in the concentration of hydroxide ions, the carboxyl groups loses its hydrogen atom in order to neutralize it, and in this way the glycine acquire the zwitterionic configuration or zwitterionic form. And in this zwitterionic form, when an amino acid is having both positive and negative charge, the amino acid acquire a net zero charge, or it becomes neutral and it does not move, it stops moving. Further, when the pH is increased beyond 7, more hydroxide ion concentration is there. So now at this time again deprotonation happen, and deprotonation happen from the amino group. In this way glycine acquire a net negative charge and form glycinate ions. So students, keep this thing in mind and you will be able to answer why the mobility of glycine or glycinate ion is different in stacking gel as well as in resolving gel. I'll discuss it. See here. In the stacking gel, or you just see in the running gel buffer, the pH is 8.3. So when glycine is there in the running buffer at pH 8.3, it is in the form of glycinate ions, and when it enters the stacking gel which has pH of 6.8, there is a sudden drop in the pH from 8.3 to 6.8. So what happens? Protonation happens because the pH is decreasing, the concentration of hydrogen ion is increasing. Since hydrogen ion concentration has increased, protonation will happen, and protonation happen at the amino group, and in this way the amino group has positive charge, whereas the carboxyl group remain in its negative form, and glycine acquire zwitterionic configuration at pH of 6.8. So as the glycinate ion from the running tank buffer move through the stacking gel, this formation or the protonation process, it continues throughout the stacking gel, and all the glycinate ions are getting converted into zwitterionic form. Since this is happening, the concentration of glycinate ion is decreasing, therefore its mobility is also hampered, its mobility is also getting decreased. So glycinate ions in the stacking gel are the slowest moving ions. Chloride ions, they are negatively charged, they will migrate the fastest towards the anode, the positive terminal, and this protein bound SDH, it is also negatively charged, but it will get stacked between the glycinate ions, the slowest migrating ions, as well as the fastest moving chloride ions. It will get between these two things, and all the polypeptides will be will form a tight band, a single tight band, and before they reach the resolving gel they will form this single band, and all the polypeptides now will enter the resolving gel at the same time. What if we don't use this stacking gel? What will happen? See, observe here, the well is 1 centimeter deep. it so if we are not using the stacking gel, all our protein samples of different molecular size, they will sit on the resolving gel as a band of 1 centimeter. It will not be a tight band. A single tight band is not there. All the polypeptides of different molecular size, they will sit as a band of 1 centimeter, which is of course very thick. So different polypeptides are going to enter at different times. So this will result in the formation of smear, and we don't want it. We want to compare our protein of interest. We want to see that uh, with our protein is having how many polypeptides in it. We want to see that. So we don't want a smear. So we have to use stacking gel above the resolving gel in order to get a tight band, so that all the polypeptides can enter the resolving gel at the same time and can get resolved according to its molecular weight. So don't rely only on resolving gel. Although in some experiments only resolving gel is also used, but that are different. Generally we use two gel system, stacking gel and resolving gel. Here you can see that in the buffer system at pH, which is at has a pH of 8.3, glycinate anion are there, or glycinate ions are there, and as it enters pH of 6.8, it is getting protonated and is acquiring zwitterionic configuration. And since because of this process the concentration of glycinate ions are decreasing, and due to this there is a decrease in mobility, and this decrease is very sharp. And the order of mobility in the stacking gel from the anode I am telling: chloride ion followed by the SDS bound protein followed by the glycinate ions. Chloride ion are moving the fastest, they are called the leading ions, and glycine ions or glycinate ions are moving the slowest and they are called trailing ions. So this is the order of mobility in the stacking gel from anode to cathode. Role of resolving gel and mobility of ions is different. Okay, in resolving gel, since resolving gel has a pH of 8.8 and stacking gel is having a pH of 6.8, so as the glycine move from pH of 6.8, which is nearly 7, where glycine exists in its zwitterionic form, as it enters the resolving gel, deprotonation happen, because due to increase in pH, or we can say due to increase in hydroxide ions, deprotonation happen in order to neutralize it. So deprotonation happen from the amino group, and in this way again there is a formation of glycinate ion, and due to this process there is a sudden increase in the concentration of glycinate ions, which results in increase in mobility of glycinate ions. These glycinate ions then surpass the stacked protein band and migrate ahead of it. So the order of mobility from anode, the positive terminal, to cathode, the negative terminal, is chloride ion moving the fastest, followed by the glycinate ion, followed by the SDS bound proteins. So I hope students you have understood why there is a change in the mobility of glycinate ion in stacking gel and resolving gel. Important points about stacking and resolving gel that every student have to keep in mind are: the pH, for stacking it is 6.8, for resolving it is 8.8. Mobility of ions, it is very important as it's gonna solve many of your questions. From anode to cathode, the mobility pattern in a stacking gel is chloride ions followed by SDS bound protein followed by glycinate ions. In resolving it is chloride ions followed by glycinate ion followed by proteins. If we talk about the concentration of monomers, then stacking gel has less concentration of the monomer acrylamide, therefore the pore size is large, and this large pore size helps the proteins of different molecular weight to migrate freely or migrate easily. In resolving gel, the monomer concentration is more, the acrylamide and bisacrylamide, its concentration is more, so the pore size is small. Protein resolve according to their molecular weight here in resolving gel. In stacking gel, protein gets stacked between chloride and glycinate ions and migrate as a single tight band. In resolving gel, no stacking is there. From the single tight band, the proteins now will migrate according to its molecular weight, or we can say molecular size. In stacking gel, the leading ions are chloride ions and the trailing ions are glycinate ions. In resolving gel, the leading ions are chloride ions, and you can say if someone asks what are trailing things in resolving gel, so that is protein bound SDS. This is the Biorad SDS page unit. It has gel caster, and gel caster has casting stand, which is transparent white plastic, and casting frame, which is green in color. They also provide tank with a lid and electrodes attached to it. Comb is there. Then short plates are there, and long plates with attached spacers are there. Spacers actually determine the thickness of your SDS page. So after assembling the short plates, the comb and the gel caster, what we have to do, we have to mark 1 centimeter below the comb, and this mark will determine the level up to which we have to fill the plate with our dissolving gel solution. And here within the red circle you can see the attached transparent spacer. After pouring the dissolving gel carefully, overlay the top surface with ethanol or isopropanol. This is needed because it prevents the interaction of oxygen with the gel, thus preventing inhibition of polymerization. As I have told you that oxygen has adverse effects on the gel formation, and because of that we were using riboflavin also. So when after pouring the resolving gel solution, we have to pour isopropanol in order to prevent interaction of oxygen with the free surface, and this practice also gives a nice flat surface. So here we have marked here we had put the black mark. Up to this level we have filled the plate with the resolving gel, and above it we had poured isopropanol. And after full polymerization you can pour out this isopropanol, or you can remove it by using filter paper. And above it you can then we have to pour the stacking gel solution, and then we have to put the comb. And after loading of the sample, your well will look like this. This blue color is due to bromophenol blue. If you can recall, bromophenol blue help in the visualization of your loading samples. So after running of the gel, you will not be able to see any polypeptide bands in your loaded well. Here the well is 2. For the ladder, the protein ladder, if you have used, you will be able to see some bands because the ladder is always mixed with some visualization dyes. So if you have used a ladder, you will be able to see the bands in the ladder lane, but not in your sample lane. For that you have to stain it, and then only you will be able to see your protein or your polypeptide band. So you can directly compare it with the ladder, or what you can do is you can prepare some standards of known concentration, like you can use BSC of different concentration, and you can make a straight line graph taking log of molecular weight on the y-axis and then relative migration of the bands at the x-axis, and this graph will give you a straight line equation if in the Excel, and using that equation you can estimate the molecular weight of your unknown protein sample. The equation y equals to mx plus b is also going to give you the y-intercept. In the equation y equals to mx plus b, mx plus c, the c denotes the y-intercept. So what this y-intercept is, y-intercept gives the gel's exclusion limit. It means any value which is greater than y will be excluded. So whatever the reference or whatever standards you are preparing, your protein molecular weight should lie into that range only. So this is one of the things that I want my students to know. Things to keep in check is TAMID is prone to oxidation, and this results in gradual loss of catalytic activity, and because of this you have to use more amount of TAMID for the same level of polymerization to happen. And when if your TAMID is of has turned to yellow, it contains oxidation products, so this denotes that your TAMID has oxidized. So now you have to use more amount of TAMID. TAMID is also hygroscopic. It means it accumulates water, and this accumulation accelerates the oxidation process, which in turn will be responsible for a gradual loss of catalytic activity. APS is also hygroscopic and it breaks down completely when dissolved in water. Therefore, therefore we have to prepare APS fresh, and because of this oxidation proneness of tamid, we have to add it in the last. We have to store it in dark colored bottle because it is light sensitive, and you should always check whether your tamid is yellow in color or not. Concentration of initiators also affect the polymerization process. So there are two things: either you are using excess of tamid and APS, or either you are using tamid and APS below the recommended value. These two things always affect your gel formation. So when you are using in excess the tamid and APS, then this will decrease the average polymer length, and because of this the gel will become more turbid, means it will not be a transparent gel, you will be getting a turbid gel. And the elasticity of the gel will also decrease, and when the elasticity of gel is decreased, it becomes rigid. It will not be flexible anymore. An oxidation process of proteins and nucleic acid can also happen, means it's gonna ruin your proteins and your nucleic acid samples. And if excess tamid can also change the pH, the pH of the buffer. And if you are changing the pH, of course your bending pattern, it's gonna affect your bending pattern also, because since the very beginning I'm discussing the role of pH, so more emphasis I have put on it. So if you're using excess of tamid, it's gonna interfere with your buffer pH system, and everything in the protein is this pH only, so it's gonna affect your bending pattern also. If you are using tamid and APS below the recommended value, then what will happen? Longer polymer chain length will be there, but there will be lower elasticity, and whatever gel you will get, it will be mechanically weaker. It will be more fragile, and the polymerization process will be slow. Of course, tamid is a catalyst, APS is the free radical source, and if you are using it in the low concentration or below the recommended concentration, of course your polymerization will be very slow, and more probably it will not happen. Things to keep in check is the temperature also affect it. If 0 to 4 degree temperature you are preparing your gel, then gel will be turbid, inelastic, and reproducibility is difficult to achieve, because reproducibility here means the pore size that you are getting, it will be difficult to achieve that pore size at 0 to 4 degrees Celsius for every gel that you prepare. 23 to 25 degrees Celsius is considered as optimal, and if you are preparing your gel at 25 degrees Celsius, then your gel will be more transparent, less porous, and more elastic. So this is the optimal temperature. So our gel should be like this. If you preparing your gel at too high temperature, then the polymer chains will get shorter, as the conversion of monomer to polymer is exothermic reaction. So your polymer chains will get shorter, and whatever gel you will be getting, it will be inelastic, flexibility will not be there in your gel. So the movement of the proteins through the gel will be difficult, and the gel will be brittle, it will be rigid also. Oxygen has a very adverse effect on the polymerization or formation of the page gel. So it acts as a free radical trap, means whatever radicals the APS is generating, oxygen is gonna react with it and will decrease its concentration. That's why I'm saying it as that oxygen is a free radical trap. So in this way, since it is trapping the free radicals, it is reacting with the free radicals, it will inhibit your polymerization process. So for the proper polymerization to happen, you have to degas the SDS page for better polymerization. So degassing is required for better gel formation and reproducibility. Then this BioRed website, it is having all kinds of troubleshooting things, and they have put this very nice table in their literature. I recommend the students to visit this website and to read it. See, everything is there. SDS doesn't polymerize. What could be the cause? Here it is written too little, too much APS or TAMID, failure to degas, temperature too low. Then, okay, this is the reason behind your problem. What could be the remedy also? What could be the solution also? So everything they have described very nicely here. See, gel feels soft, low percent T. Percent T denotes the concentration of monomers, the acrylamide and bisacrylamide. So you may have used very low concentration of monomers there, therefore your gel is very soft. It doesn't polymerize up to that level. It poor quality acrylamide and bisacrylamide, too little cross linker is bisacrylamide. So what remedies we can use? So all these things are there in their literature. I'll recommend the students to visit this website. I have provided this link in the description box also, so please go through if you are interested and read it. And this will help you in understanding, and also it will increase your knowledge. So I recommend it. Okay, I haven't discussed the questions yet in this training procedure. I'll discuss it in my next video. So uh, please wait for the time and upload the next video. Up to this mark, I hope you all have understood what SDS page is and why we are using SDS, what are the mobility of ions in it, what is the order. So this video is gonna answer your many questions which are asked in the viva. So thanks students, be a learner and an explorer, and wait for my next video. Thank you.